The sheer quantity of structures that seemed to be here was extraordinary. I had to check it out.
The ruins should be this way. It's just a building. Look at that. The layers. The platform mound right there. No way. Might be a tomb in there.
There had to be thousands of these pieces of pottery scattered throughout the site. And one of the most intriguing things about this site was this set of megalithic stones. They seemed out of place compared to the rest of the structures. There are a lot of things and a lot of developments happening with the channel, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button below to make sure you stay up to date with the latest videos and the latest announcements about the things going on behind the scenes. And with that, let's take a look at this site. In this northern valley in Peru, there seemed to be a swath of structures tucked away along this mountain ridge. It almost seemed strategically positioned on the slope of the mountains facing away from the valley. The sheer quantity of structures that seemed to be here was extraordinary. Everything from walls, terracing, possible housing structures, even perhaps plazas, temples, and administrative centers of some kind. The structures stretched for almost a full mile. And it was clear, though, that for whatever may have been there in the past, it used to be a center of bustling activity. I had to check it out. The only way I could see accessing the location was coming off this possible dirt road snaking its way through the hollow between the mountains. I was as isolated could get.
This moment to show how isolated I am in the middle of this desert.
Now, I tried to get the Jeep as close as I could, leaving any sort of road and civilization long behind me, and from there I was on foot.
The ruins should be this way. I'm really hoping they're not over the mountain, because then there's no way to get to them. And it is, if you can hear it, it's super windy. So I don't know how well the drone's gonna do, but we'll see. I'll test it out. I'm gonna climb here for a better vantage point. Oh my goodness.
If you didn't catch that, a fox crossed my path, and it was actually the 5th day in a row where each time I was at a different site hundreds of kilometers away, and a random fox
Should we take that as a sign we're on the right path?
would happen to cross my path as I'm making the excursion to a set of ruins. It was pretty wild and definitely felt like it was some sort of spiritual connectedness happening. As I kept making my way in the direction I thought these ruins were, I was starting to see pottery shards, which was a good sign.
I really wish I could get the drone in the air. There's structure. There is structure. This is a wall. This is a wall. Or it was a wall.
I was coming up on what I believe were these perimeter walls that you can see from the satellite imagery.
I feel like this is where you were supposed to enter. Wow, look. It's just a building. But up there too. No way.
This stone here might be showing signs of possibly being hammered with stones, but I'm not a geologist, so it could be natural.
I don't know if it's geological or not. Might be.
You could see structures and walls all over the place. This was incredible. This wasn't terracing, these were buildings.
No way. The platform mound right there. No way.
You could clearly hear how windy it was at this site, but I had to try to get my drone in the air. Based on the location, I was assuming this could be Moche construction, whose culture sprawled across these northern valleys of Peru from roughly 100 to 800 CE. And it was more of a network of city-states that shared a common cultural, religious, and artistic practice than anything else. And each of these city-states would have their own autonomous leadership, which would make sense as this location was clearly vast and consisted of multiple structures, which indicated a strong societal network and community.
If I recall correctly, this was just a piece, a very, very tiny piece.
But the simplistic pieces of pottery I was finding, without any designs, I dare say this could have been much earlier than the Moche.
More pottery. Might be a burial there.
Even the Gallinazo culture, who predated the Moche and occupied this region, their pottery was more involved than what I was currently finding at this location. It might be hard to tell as everything kind of blends in, but these here are all pieces of pottery.
Be a tomb in there.
There were just structures everywhere. There had to be thousands of these pieces of pottery scattered throughout the site, but again, with no designs whatsoever. And if this had come from looting of burial sites, I would have been seeing human remains, which I wasn't, so it was strange. Almost as if this place had been abandoned or suffered some kind of massive catastrophe. There was no way for me to count the amount of structures at this site, but it could easily be in the hundreds.
Unbelievable.
This looked like a layered pyramid, perhaps with the platforms being carved out of the bedrock and clear stone additions on top of those. But it almost had a very Teotihuacan feel to its stylization. And one of the most intriguing things about this site was this set of megalithic stones. I was taken aback because they seemed out of place compared to the rest of the structures, but they clearly seemed to be stacked on top of each other in a somewhat uniform fashion. And on closer inspection, it would appear that at one point even these non-uniform stones were placed snugly against each other. It's almost reminiscent of the megalithic stonework in Cusco. But being here on the coast may have meant that they suffered worse environmental effects, like tsunamis on top of earthquakes, from which you can see they've come slightly apart. Could this be the same construction technique over 1,200 miles away? And right next to the wall here, there were these pits that gave off the impression of having been burials due to their size and shape. But again, no bones or bone fragments left behind, so that's very debatable. There was another wall here, and I mean it was just again structure after structure. Throughout the entire site, I don't know if I found a single bone fragment of any human remains, which is a little odd to me based on many of the other unlabeled locations that I've been to, which makes me think that this place was probably abandoned. One thing is for sure though, at the height of its occupation, this was once a thriving, bustling community. Now, it's possible that all the pottery I was finding at this site was simply just cookware and therefore not too impressive. However, the fact that there were thousands of sherds all over this site make it a bit hard to believe that if there was something a little bit more sophisticated, like Moche ceramics, that there wouldn't be at least a couple of shards throughout this site. But there wasn't. So it leads me to believe that the people who occupied this territory probably predated those cultures. And with the megalithic stones and the possible megalithic construction, it was a little odd because this was the only location that I found those in. Now, granted, I only explored about 10% of the site, so it's very possible that there are other areas that might have this type of construction. But I'll be speaking to a geologist about this to get their take on whether or not something like this is natural or not. But for now, I'm just going to kind of call it the way I see it. It looks like megalithic construction. Definitely let me know what you think in the comments. Could this be megalithic construction or is it natural? And please share this video with anyone who you think might find it interesting, and definitely hit that subscribe button below because there's some pretty remarkable stuff coming down the pipeline and I don't want you to miss it. And if you want to help support the work that Pillars of the Past is doing, there's a ton of links in the description below that will do just that. As always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next video.